Welcome to our Sunday morning devotional brought to you by Golden Isles Primitive Baptist Fellowship and Heart Floss TV. To begin our devotional this morning, here's Brenda to sing, Does Jesus Care?
Does Jesus care when my heart is pained too deeply for mirth or song? As the burdens press and the cares distress and the way grows weary and long. Does Jesus care when my way is dark with a nameless dread and fear? As the daylight into deep night shades, does he care enough to be near? Oh yes, he cares, I know he cares. His heart is touched with my grief. When the days are weary, the long nights dreary, I know my Savior cares. Does Jesus care when I've tried and failed to resist some temptation strong? When for my deep grief there is no relief, though my tears flow all the night long. Oh yes, he cares, I know he cares. His heart is touched with my grief. When the days are weary, the long nights dreary, I know my Savior cares. Does Jesus care when I've said goodbye to the dearest on earth to me, and my sad heart aches till it nearly breaks? Is it aught to him does he see? Oh yes, he cares, I know he cares. His heart is touched with my grief. When the days are weary, the long nights dreary, Yes.
Thank you, Brenda. And we can be assured this morning that Jesus does care. This morning's lesson is entitled The Seasons of Life. The Seasons of Life. And it is a text that I'm using for my nephew, Kelly Edward Eckleberry's memorial service out in Arlington, Arizona. And I think this is an appropriate lesson for you and for me as we view our lives the way that God views them, seasonal as the plants of the field. Back in November 1963, as a soldier in the Army overseas, I remember hearing on Armed Forces radio the announcement that President John F. Kennedy was dead. That was devastating news. We felt confused, we felt dejected, we felt angry, and wondered how in the world this could have happened. But a few days later, at the Mass that was conducted in Washington, D.C., the bishop read Ecclesiastes 3. And I'll never forget it. The reading of that scripture made all the difference in the world. The first two verses tell us about life, about the cycles of life, about the seasons of life. And here Solomon compares the growing seasons, the seasons of plant life, to that of our own. For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born, and a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to pluck up what is planted, or a time to harvest. So the first season of plant growth and of our human lives is a time to be born, a time to live. God gives life to the plants of the field, and He gives life to humans also. Listen to this from Psalm 100, verse 3. Know that the Lord, He is God. It is He who made us, and we are His. We are His people and the sheep of His pasture. You see, He made us, and we are His. There is a time to be born, a time to live, as God gives us this precious gift. But then Solomon writes, there is a time to die. Just as our crops flourish for a season, and maybe you can hear the rain storming outside the house here this morning, but that's a good reminder of how God provides for the plants during the growing season, and also for you and me during the seasons that we live. Just as our crops do flourish for a season, at the end of the growing season, they die. The psalmist said, our life is like that. In Psalm 103, verse 15 and verse 16, the psalmist writes, as for man, his days are like grass. He flourishes like a flower of the field, for the wind passes over it, and it is gone. I've always liked the words of Frank Herbert in the Dune Messiah. Listen to these words. The flesh surrenders itself. Eternity takes back its own. Our bodies stirred these waters briefly, danced with a certain intoxication before the love of life and self, dealt with a few strange ideas, then submitted to the instruments of time. What can we say of this? I occurred, I am not, yet I occurred. That's the season of life, followed by the season of death, a time to die. But then Solomon writes, there is a time to plant. And of course, he is speaking of the seed. The plant cycle doesn't end with the death of the plant. The seed is separated out and planted, buried, if you will, and a new cycle begins. Jesus said of his own impending death in John chapter 12, verse 24, truly, truly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. So you see, the old plant will live again when its dead seed are placed in the ground. And we are figuratively planted, whether a whole body or the dust, whichever, it makes no difference, it's all the same. God told Adam, dust thou art, and unto dust shalt thou return. Which brings us to the final stage of the seasons of life, a time to harvest. This speaks of resurrection, and resurrection has two elements. First of all, in this time of harvest, resurrection means for us a new body. Paul compares sowing or burying and harvesting to the resurrection. He wrote in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 36, 37, and what you sow is not the body that is to be. He's speaking of seed now, making the comparison as Solomon did. What you sow is not the body that is to be, but a bare kernel, perhaps of wheat or of some other grain. But God gives it a body as he has chosen, to each kind of seed its own body. So then Paul says, that's how it is with you and me in this last season of our life cycle, the time of resurrection, the time of harvest. So it is, Paul writes, with the resurrection of the dead. What is sown is perishable, what is raised is imperishable. It is sown a natural body, it is raised a spiritual body. So God, just like with the seed, makes us a new body and gives it that living soul that went to be with him when we died. So then the second component of our resurrection, a time, as Solomon said, to pluck up that which has been planted, the next part is a new home. Jesus said a wonderful thing in John chapter 14. Listen to this. Let not your heart be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go to prepare a place for you, I will come again, that where I am, there ye may be also. A new home, a new body, and a new home. In that time that God plucks up that which is planted. So those are the seasons of life. A time for living, a time for dying, a time for planting or burying, a time for harvesting, resurrection, a new body, a new home. Now to close our devotional this morning, here's Brian to sing, Take My Hand, Precious Lord.
When my way groweth drear, precious Lord, linger near. When my light is almost gone, hear my cry, hear my call, hold my hand lest I fall. Take my hand, precious Lord, and lead me on. Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, let me stand. I am tired, I am weak, I am worn. Through the storm, through the night, lead me on to the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, and lead me home. When my work is all done and my race here is won, let me see by the light thou hast shown that fair city so bright, where the lantern is the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, and lead me on. Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, let me stand. I am tired, I am weak, I am worn. Through the storm, through the night, lead me on to the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, and lead me home. When the shadows appear and the night draws near and the day is past and gone, at the river I stand, guide my feet, hold my hand. Take my life, precious Lord, and lead me home. Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, let me stand. I am tired, I am weak, I am worn. Through the storm, through the night, lead me on to the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, and lead me on. Take my hand, precious Lord, and lead me home.